is going to be a good one. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. What we're going to try to do is line up what's happening within the ecosystem of Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin is flying right now with some news, even though, albeit the fake news on ETF. But at the same time, we'll see a lot happening from the macro perspective. And you know that's kind of what we cover here on the channel a lot. But we wanted to dive into the complexities of what's happening inside Bitcoin as a platform. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people lose track of is, can Bitcoin be used for payments? And if so, what would you use? I want to go to a clip that shows our guest today talking at the Bitcoin conference to some of the developers within the Lightning Network to kind of frame it in the sense of whether or not Lightning could be used. And if you look at this conversation, he pretty much destroys the issue of what Lightning is standing for. And this is why I think it's important. So let's go to this first clip.
They said that if they could get a 1% or 5% boost to revenue by adopting drive chains, they would do it in a second.
But the problem is,
it won't be 1%. It would be
Bitcoin,
10x, 100x, or even 1,000.
I mean, hang on. Let's be clear though. There's a misconception there.
I asked you what the problem with this idea was. You just said that you mixed up L1 and L2, and you said that I don't like miners having control over the L2 withdrawals, even though they already have control over the Lightning Network justice transactions. So it's exactly the same thing.
Well,
and now we're on this weird odyssey on like miner costs. Merge mining the sidechain is essentially free. They don't even need their own node. They can just.
That's just categorically false.
No, they get 51% hash rate can censor the justice transaction. The problem with Lightning, though, of course, is that even the proponents don't expect 8 billion people to be able to use it, whereas with this they could, and so that's a pretty big difference.
The tech people don't agree with you on that.
Yeah.
This is silly discussion. You go read the blog post I just posted.
You may not care about a certain thing like the EVM or something, but other people care about it, and you may not care about large blocks. This isn't about what other people like. It's about their ability to choose.
All right, so of course that's Paul Sztorc, who is the CEO of LayerTwo Labs, and welcome Paul Sztorc into the show today. Great to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so obviously we showed a little bit from the Amsterdam Bitcoin conference, your engagement there with the Lightning teams and some of the developers out there. And this is some of the things that we've kind of talked about here on the channel in general. And when you look at what Lightning and what you're trying to do, Paul, with LayerTwo Labs and sidechains, if you can kind of give our audience a breakdown of the inefficiencies of Lightning versus an alternative, and what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Lightning Network, but what has happened was because of the scaling war, the Lightning Network is like an idea that has collided with the Bitcoin culture and damaged it a lot. Because people in Bitcoin are very insecure about Bitcoin's future, they need to tell this story where Lightning is going to fix everything. And it might be true someday, but the current idea, the current version of the idea is not. It's just not the case. So the Lightning idea is a good enough idea. Right. The key inside of the Lightning Network is it's kind of like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is, where so it's like maybe I have a channel with you and you have a channel with someone else, and so then maybe I can pay them through you. That's the idea of the Lightning Network, and I think unfortunately it's probably not going to work out for a couple different reasons. But the bigger issue is that the Lightning Network is like this meme that has collided with the Bitcoin community, and people just start talking about it, and unfortunately they stop being honest with themselves. It's out of my own concern for them that I started speaking up sort of against it. They're suffering, I think, psychologically, many of them. It's not quite as bad as something like, Theranos or whatever, but it is like there's this big difference between what like the marketing people say, the people on Twitter who don't use Lightning. They say a certain thing, and then they're in the back room trying to make the blood machine work, and it's,
Right. The Lightning Network history here over time.
Yeah.
All the way back to 2021. You can kind of see it's a bit of a stale platform in the sense that we haven't seen a lot of growth on it within it. Obviously, some news here recently with some security concerns. Can you kind of explain the security concerns that were revealed by some of the developers in the market?
Yes, I will explain that. But first, I liked your graph, and I wanted to point out something. The most important thing about the graph is something that hides in plain sight, which is that at maximum, it's only 5,000 coins, basically.
Right.
And there's 19 million coins. So this is like 0.02% or something.
Mm-hmm.
So we see we're nowhere. It's like, so it's very small. And then people try to make arguments about, oh, well, maybe there's a coin in there that turns over like millions of times a month. Blah, blah, blah. That's a bunch of hope. So now to your second point, there was recently a vulnerability in Lightning. It can be fixed, but in order to fix it, the current problematic people in Bitcoin, the bad people and the bad guys, they have to admit that they were wrong about something else. So it's unclear when these two malicious. We have saving Lightning, and then we have admitting that we still need more soft fork opcodes, because the vulnerability is that when the thing times out, it's still possible to use either of the two paths. So one person pulls the payment from you, and the other person uses the timeout, and now the person in the middle is left having routed a payment, but they get nothing. I tried to get this idea popularized in like 2019 of the idea of channel risk, that who you open the channel with makes a big deal. But yeah, I think this is not a great bug. I wouldn't be routing any payments for anyone else personally until the bug is
in looking
fixed.
at that. Yeah, I want to go to, because payments are a big part of this. I want to go to this next clip right here on Bitcoin payment potentials. Listen in.
What do you think, Renee? Like, do you think that we can get to a point where even like the first attempt that someone makes that tries to make a payment should work?
So I think that will hardly be possible without severely changing the protocol. So this is the way how the protocol is designed. So payment failures, or at least the failures of attempts, are built into the protocol. The question is, what can we do about this?
Do we have like suggestions on that? Like,
what you could do is you could basically say, well, if I have enough liquidity, let's do 5 of them concurrently, and let's hope that statistically at least 1 arrives. But then the question is, if we do it in the current protocol, if 2 arrives, somebody could claim 2 payments, and then you would overpay. You don't want to do that.
So these were some of the challenges that were represented at the conference there. Just as a kind of a callback to this is, we've talked about this before around transactions and the speed of transactions that are needed. Visa recently did a big test. One of the things they put in their big report, and we've showed this multiple times. If you guys want to go back and check some of our videos on the Visa payment systems, check that out. But one thing they highlight here is Bitcoin may take up 60 minutes for 6 additional blocks to be created. And then if you look at the ones that were looked at, of course, Solana was selected for their test at this point. We don't know if Solana is going to be the one being chosen, but that's the point is that these kind of transaction speed issues that we're dealing with are some of the biggest problems. When you look at this, Paul, I mean, why didn't Visa just choose Lightning if Lightning was already in the capacity of being able to do things?
I don't know what Visa, I don't know what Visa's up to, and the interblock time has always been. I'll come back to that in a second. First, I wanted you had a Renee Picard on that video, and if everyone would listen to Renee Picard more, that would be very good for Bitcoin and very good for the Lightning Network and very good for society, because Renee is great, and Renee wrote Mastering Lightning, the book. What's not helping at all is for people to mindlessly cheer on the Lightning Network and just say everything is good. And then if think about it, in most contexts, if anyone ever said anything bad about the Lightning Network, they would be like shouted down, and they would be criticized, and they would get a social backlash. The Lightning Network is ironically is a little bit to unpack, but sometimes the Lightning Network is slow, or sometimes the payments fail. People are obviously not going to like that. When you pay with Visa, it does fail sometimes, but like I think it's got to be like 1 in 200 for me or less. Like almost always when I pay, it works. And sometimes they're like, "Wait a minute, we need to do it again" or something. So that's kind of like what most people will tolerate. As for Solana being faster, this is a trade-off that Solana has made at enormous cost, enormous long-run cost. So they're going to have to repay that with interest. But a crucial thing to keep in mind in the context of like my idea of the Drivechain and just the idea of competition among different chains is that clearly the idea is popular among some users. So we should be able to make, it's not really about whether or not Solana is a good idea or not. It should really be about, for any idea, good or bad, it should be possible to make that like a Bitcoin idea. That's the sidechain idea. Now we'll see if I ever prevail in my quest to convert every idea, good and bad, to a Bitcoin project. But because weirdly people then say, well, we don't like that idea, so we don't want it to be. We don't want Bitcoin adoption, is what they say. It's very bizarre.
I want to go over to a clip here. This was by Michael Saylor in reference to streaming payments. Listen to what he had to say.
Lightning is a chance for us to introduce some really compelling new enterprise applications. Companies right now spend billions of dollars rewarding their employees. What if we could give people instant employee rewards for filling out surveys, being at the meeting, engaging? Whatever email address you've been using for the past 20 years now is a Lightning receiver that flows into your Lightning wallet. When you show up to your Zoom, you get Satoshi reward. Then, of course, if you fill out a book review, Amazon can give you Satoshis. And if you fill out a survey applying for an Amazon credit card, they can give you Satoshis. And if you get approved, they can give you more Satoshis. It's a way to gamify and make fun things. And the thing that makes it all possible is microtransactions and streaming via the Lightning network.
My question to you, Paul, is that even possible right now within Lightning?
I would say it's probably not possible right now. It's certainly, Lightning already has an unsolvable onboarding problem where you can't have 8 billion people use it today. In order to join the Lightning network, you need a channel already open on L1. Michael Saylor, he has this skill. I guess I wish I had. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. He's a great salesman. He's got this great story. He's got this great vision. I think it was Milton Friedman who said there are idea manufacturers and then there are idea distributors and wholesalers and retailers and consumers. So the idea is, he's good at, he can spin a great little story there. And, enough of it is true that it is, it sounds plausible and inspiring enough where it's true that you could do, with cheaper payments, with micropayments, you could do that kind of thing. For example, Lightning has another issue of being very sensitive to the L1 fee rate. If the L1 transaction fee is 80 cents or whatever it is, something around where it is now that the price is going up, it'll probably be higher. Mm-hmm. So if it's 80 cents for like a 200 byte transaction, that basically you can't route anything significantly less than the current L1 fee rate. So if it's 80 cents, if Bitcoin L1 is 80 cents, then you really can't route something less than 80 cents on the Lightning network. What people do,
well, yeah, you can't get into microtransactions. That also would eliminate a lot of retail.
Yeah.
I want to go to another clip here. This is Bitcoin University. This is in reference to your drive chains. A little bit. Listen to this one.
Yeah.
This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University. Let's revisit this drive chains discussion in 10 years from now would be my advice. It's not appropriate for quote unquote friends of Bitcoin like Paul to advocate for very fast changes to Bitcoin and to try to pressure people. Who needs more tokens? Who wants to make it easy to issue shitcoins on sidechains? These are just things that I'm not interested in. We have Bitcoin. You are going to fail. You are certainly going to fail. Ugly drive chain proponents can attempt to apply pressure to Bitcoin core devs to try to change the software to include drive chains. They won't do this because they know that full nodes like you and me will refuse to run this changed software, any of this drive chains nonsense. And I have some advice to Paul Sztorc. Why don't you go build your drive chains on a low value network like Litecoin or Bcash? BIPs 300 and 301 will never be approved. I predict that Paul will rage quit like a little baby when he finally realizes that he's not going to get his way and that he's not bigger than the Bitcoin network and that he can't push through these changes. Here's some advice for everyone. If you ever want to offer a new BIP, don't be Paul.
All right, so you responded to this on Twitter. Lengthy and detailed response.
Because I'm rushing it through, of course. So in addition to being very, very rude, almost everything he said was completely false. It's framed as though getting a BIP is some like favor that he's doing for me, when in really it's just the idea that's best for Bitcoin. So he doesn't even, it would never even occur to him that Bitcoin needs ideas.
What is the core argument between drive chains and what their recommendation is right now in such a case as the clip we just played?
Well, again, they think that they said we should revisit adding a new soft fork in 10 years. But then Michael Saylor said in the previous clip that Lightning Network is the key to all this great stuff. But right before that, I just discussed that you have to have one or the other because it is actually broken because of this new exploit. So they'll need a new soft fork. I think it kind of spoke for itself. I was just listening to it again. I was thinking like, oh my gosh, does anyone? And like, if anyone did the tiniest amount of research, they would know that the ideas from 2015, like long before Michael Saylor bought his first Bitcoin. So like the idea of it being rushed through is like, and it doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, and I don't need to tell you that obviously he didn't like give me any kind of like opportunity to comment, or he didn't invite me on his show. I would love to have a little conversation with him about. But I did that Twitter reply, and I don't know why. I honestly don't know the people who put that together. I have no idea what they were thinking because you go to layer2labs.com/friends. We have an enormous number of supporters. We have like the creme de la creme. Rene Picard is a big supporter on that list. Add him back via Joff.
Yep.
I don't know.
So you really think this is really just internal strife between the Bitcoin community, trying to get Lightning off the ground, understanding its future opportunity, but not yet being able to apply that technology to Bitcoin today. And at the same time, we have this massive rush to what will be our next bull run and most likely some pretty big institutional adoption. Obviously, we've already seen what just a small hint and whiff of an ETF can do to the market. So a lot more people involved in the future. So there's a lot at risk here, obviously, for both Bitcoiners and the future of what the Lightning Network can reference. Beyond that, you look at some of the others. I wanted to kind of go over to another tweet here because in reference to BIPs, why would you even bother with this? I mean, why go this direction? What's the long game if you're continuing to get pushback from the Bitcoin community?
Well, yeah, the BIP process of course, is horrible, and Jeremy Rubin quit over it when he did 119, and it's he tried to advocate for his idea, and again, people interpret it as there's a prestige economy among the Bitcoin developers, and then but the key part of the story is 2 years later, everyone was saying this is the best. BIP 119 is the best BIP around. It enables covenants and it enables ARC, and ARC is going to be what saves the Lightning Network. So, so that just proves that the idea was good the whole time, and everyone was, a bullshitter, basically.
Yeah.
So politics. That's how it is. Well, they didn't even know. People would talk about 119, knowing nothing about it one way or the other. I wish it weren't the case. If I could do it over, I would just push the BIP anonymously. And I would probably do the wrong thing. I would suck up to people and tell them that their terrible ideas were very good, and et cetera, because I had no idea that it'd be so blatantly corrupt, which is what it is.
Right.
Casey has this ordinals BIP that you want to discuss
and
that.
His is running in the same scenario.
It's the exact same scenario. Yeah, he says, what is and he's absolutely 100% correct. The BIPs are in very different types. And the informational BIP is the lightest. And so then they're like, well, we can't do that. But now don't you see, like, this is the whole problem in the first place, is that shouldn't the ideas just compete on their merit? It's just like, okay, if it doesn't have the right prestige or legitimacy, just explain what the problem is and then just say it's rejected. Right now, you have to justify every decision you make to people who are not specialists in the decision. And that's what we don't have in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, it's all run like a USSR style, and it sucks. And it's the worst thing about Bitcoin, of course. The process is very defective. It's because it encouraged people to shill the Lightning Network. Now they're going to have to walk all that back, all that stuff, unless they want to say the same thing about OpExpire.
I want to play a game with you. This is a tier maker, so we're going to tier some ideas here, and I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so some of our audience can say. But the first one we're going to show is BRC20 ordinals, and I'm going to give you, based on your expertise, you've been around in this industry for quite a while, probably one of the longest rating devs out there. So very arbitrary based
tier list.
Just on
for fun only.
Yes, for fun only in terms of ideas. But BRC20 ordinals, where would you put that on the tier list? A through D.
Well, let's see.
D being worst idea, of course.
Of course, yeah. I'm going to go with the C, but I don't want anyone to be misled by that. I think it's worth doing. It's mostly harmless. It does a lot of great things culturally for Bitcoin. Those should be on their own sidechain anyway. They shouldn't really be on L1, but I think it's a good idea.
And let's go to runes.
I'm not as familiar with runes. I'm sorry to say. I'm very familiar with a lot of these other things, but
all right, well, let's
runes
move,
I think they're mostly like the same as ordinals. So maybe we could leave it unranked.
Yeah, I'll leave it unranked right now. Let's go to liquid network.
I think again we should do it, but I don't think anyone will like it, and I think it has taken the air out of the room with sidechains. It has misled a lot of people. I could give it a C tier also.
Rootstock.
See, these C tiers are like we should still do it. Rootstock, we should do it. I think. They've had trouble executing. I think Rootstock, we could give them a C tier.
BitVM?
I'm going to give that a B tier. B tier.
All right.
Ooh, I think one day we'll be doing some cool stuff with that. Not anytime soon.
Obviously, Drivechains.
Drivechains, I got to give it an A tier. There's nothing wrong with it. It solves every problem. It has no risk. We can easily undo it. It's just counting to 13,000. Get over it, people. Yeah. It's a great idea. They're going to have to admit it sooner or later.
Spider chain.
Spider chains. I got to say, I think it could be good. I think it's liquid. I gave it the liquid C tier. I think it could be great. I think it could be great. It could be a B tier, but I think it's a C tier for now.
Lightning Network, of course.
Well, I had to knock the Lightning Network because of the cultural damage it has done. And so I think I would have in the past been B, but now I'm going to have to give it a C tier. I think it's the same as liquid, really.
And then we'll go to RGB.
I think RGB is a lost cause. Thorchain, it does seem to be. I'd like to check and see how many people are still using it. Do you know is it popular? It's like a trustless swap. It's like a decentralized Uniswap thing. I don't know how much. I don't know if people are using it. Then
there is a community.
Militantly pro. But if they're not using it that much, then I think it ended up. I would say B tier. B tier.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know, but this is conditional on the use. If someone looks it up and it says no one's using it, and then I would say
move it down
for whatever reason
Stacks.
It didn't work out.
What about Stacks?
Stacks, I think Stacks is a lot of self-deception. I feel bad putting him in the only D tier, but I think that I've got a D tier.
And then don't change Bitcoin.
Well, this is a sad one because there's a sense in which it's great and necessary, and there's a complete sense in which it's a total lost cause. I think in the context of what we've discussed and in like the way Michael Saylor would interpret it, I would say lost cause.
Wow. Okay. There you go. What do you think about other ideas? If you think about David Marcus with LightSpark, what are your thoughts on other ideas that could make this list as well?
Other ideas that should be on the list?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a pretty good list. Not a bad list. Well, there's a Ruben Thompson had a state chain L2. There are some other L2s that could be on here.
Yeah,
those are good. There's lots of good ideas out there. We should be more pluralist, and we should not try to police how it is that people use Bitcoin. That is a path of a tyranny, and as long as someone is not interfering with someone else's use case, and that's exactly what the L1 protocol already does. So this is why it's bizarre for someone to be against the soft fork. You don't have to upgrade your node or the soft fork. Your node does everything it was doing before, and it doesn't start doing anything new, and it doesn't stop doing anything it was doing. So the node, the soft fork is already an institution that protects Bitcoin's properties. The fact that you can upgrade via the soft fork, that's also something that Bitcoin has done. We did that 16 times in the first 7 years of Bitcoin. So
I want to play this last clip for you and then get your opinion on it real quick in reference to the importance of the halving. Listen in.
Is the halving the main driver of the Bitcoin price?
In this cycle, no. I think it's liquidity.
Yeah, I agree. By definition, there's nothing on it that should impact price.
I think the halving is still bullish. Let's do a show of hands in the audience. So I agree with you. It's a little bit like investing in a company where the annual report's coming out. You know what date it's coming out on. We might learn something about competitors to this future monetary asset and the actions those competitors might take. You just don't know what actions they will or won't take until the event occurs.
The data points that we have in terms of halving, they're not enough to come to pretty much any conclusion.
All right, so that question to you. Halving, is that as important as it has been in the past?
Well, you know, what the halving does is it makes like a little event, and people can throw parties. And it's funny. I kind of make fun of the halving, but I plan on throwing a little halving party myself to invite some local Bitcoin friends. So it's arbitrary, but maybe arbitrary things are important, you know, because it's an excuse to whatever, meet the family or something. The ETF also, I think people have expected it for a while. There are surprises with the ETF where it's like no one knows. The poor Winklevoss twins have been trying to get this ETF for like 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like maybe even 12 years. I don't know. And there's always right around the corner. And now BlackRock will probably get the job done, but no one knows exactly when. And so it's possible it's ETF related, but I think it has to be something that's a pretty big surprise usually, or it's just the normal trajectory of people learning about Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, and you know, there are a lot of macro pressures. Obviously, we talk about that a lot on the show as well. But I would agree with you. I think the ETF, between the two, I feel that ETF is probably going to have a little bit more of an impact, at least in this particular cycle, from an institutional.
Yeah.
Paul, it's always fun picking your brain. I learn something every time we get a chance to talk. And
okay, hey, great.
Anyway, we appreciate you stopping in today. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, so you guys tuned in. Whether you're on the podcast side of things, jump over here to the YouTube channel. You'll get a chance to catch more content from us. Make sure and subscribe. If you're not in our Diamond Circle, which is our email list, it's our way to spread more content out there. We do a bunch of different podcasts, technical analysis, all that kind of stuff as well. So all you have to do is click the link down below. If you guys want to reach me out there on X, it's at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.